So actually I see a lot of new faces, which is great. So I'm just going to say that I am Karen Sawchenko, and I am a member of WCF. I've been an invisible member for this last year. I'm on the roster, but in italics, which means I'm doing the lesson from home, but I'm attached to Marilyn's group. Where's Marilyn's group? There you are. That's my group back there. Texting group, yeah. Anyway, so this is my 34 years ago, I joined WCF. And I was a leader 2 years after that. My daughter was a baby, and my son was 3. So these ladies grew up with my children. My daughter came to the nursery, my son came to off days. That's when school was, they had sessions, it was year-round school, so they had breaks during the school year, and I would take him with me to the meetings, so he even got to come while he was in elementary school. And I can remember he came for one of Father Mike's talks, I don't know if you remember that, and he listened. I don't know, he must have been like in 4th grade, and he wanted to, Father had a test, a personality test or something, and he wanted to take it, and that is my son. So he was, I don't know that I saw it every time, but he was always interested in God. That's the truth. So anyway, so I am part of you, and I wanted to start off this my first doing the Our Father, and so if we could just do that, because I wanted to say, in the name of the Father, God, who created me and my son and my husband, and the Lord Jesus Christ, who redeemed us and took my son especially out of the miry clay and redeemed him and brought him home to his heart in the Roman Catholic Church, and to the Holy Spirit, who filled him up and fills us up. We thank you, Lord, for the gift of your Trinity. And so I just want to start off by giving praise and thanks to our God for what he has done in my life and in the life of my son and my whole family and all of you. You know, we're part of it. So I have not a lot of time, so I really did try to think about what were the most important things. And so I want to start off with God who created my son, because we had to say yes to that creation. And we were married 10 years before we had children, because I kept delaying it. My husband was ready to have kids, and I kept delaying it because I had a career and I was working, and I really didn't want to stop. And gradually, my sister had a baby, and so I went to take care of him, and that kind of softened me a little bit, and thought, well, maybe this wouldn't be so bad. You know? But it was really not something I was like dying to have children. And I was away from the church, by the way. I'm saying all of this. I was not in the church. And so I had, of course, my own conversion back to the church, and just really quickly, it was through my work, which was very important to me, and that really is me, work, 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 work. And we had a crisis in my job, and a client ran away, and I was in charge of the housing. I ran group homes for developmentally disabled people, and this was a young adult home with a very special syndrome called Prader-Willi syndrome. And one of the clients ran away, and these children, people, they look like cherubs. People think that maybe they were cherubs were modeled after them, because it's a genetic disorder that has existed a long time, obviously. And they have insatiable appetites, and so they'll just eat till they can really, really almost kill themselves. They'll eat so much. So we had a group home for these people, and she ran away, and I was desperate to find her, because I felt responsible. This was I was the program director in charge of the homes that she lived in, and she ran away and was gone. I visited another home, and I was driving home late at night, and I just hadn't prayed in a long time, but I just really went to the Lord in the car on the way home, and I just said, Lord, just put her in a safe place. Just put her with people that won't hurt her. And so I'm driving home, and I'm praying the Our Father, the Hail Mary, what I can do. And then I said, and I promise you, I started naming all of my sins. Work has been my first priority. I haven't, stepped in a church except for Christmas and Easter for, 10 years. and just listing them, making work my priority about my family, my husband. And I said, I promise you, if you put her in a safe place and find her for us, I will be in a church on Sunday. I don't know which church, and I wasn't sure I would go back to the Catholic church. That's what I was raised in. But I said, I will be in a church on Sunday. And it will just be you and me, and I will follow you. You'll show me what to do, and that's the way it'll be. So I go home, and at 3 a.m. in the morning, I got a phone call from a priest. Woke me up, calling me by name, saying, Karen, is this Karen Sawchenko? And I said, yes, this is Father, can't even remember his name, from St. Mary's Star of the Sea in La Jolla Parish. I have Yvette. That was the name of the client. I went, oh my gosh. It was literally like Jesus calling me in the middle of the night saying, come home to the Catholic Church. She was lost, but you are found, and you are coming home to the Catholic Church. It was just that simple. That's what brought me back. And so I wanted to share that story for a number of reasons, because I don't, it had to start somewhere, and this is where it started for John, me coming back. And I wanted it because priests don't realize what they're doing. They don't, most of the time, they're just being priests. They have no idea what they are planting, what the fruit's coming from it. I mean, when they get to heaven, they're going to be just stunned. This poor priest has no idea what he started. I tried to tell Father Pat Mulcahy, because it's his parish now, because the priest is gone. I can't even tell him, he's passed away. So I told Father Pat, just so somebody at that parish would know the blessing that came from that call. That he struggled with her for what happened was, she was put in a safe place because some people found her. She was leaving a restaurant. She was in a restaurant, and she walked out. She got clear, from Chula Vista up to La Jolla by herself. And she was leaving the restaurant, and this family saw her and knew there was something wrong. And they took her to the church at 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. And he waited until 3 o'clock because he didn't know what to do with her. And he just didn't know what to do. And he called the police, and they told him to call me, because she was on the news. I mean, they were looking for her. So anyways, that's my story. And I was at the Catholic Church very next Sunday, and have not looked back since. That was the beginning. And a few years later, I found my way to WCF because I really wanted to be in a Bible study. And WCF was the only study that had a nursery, and I had children by then. So that's how I got here. But I want to say, one of the very first things I did as a Catholic returning to the church was I had a baby. I had to be open to that. And so John was my first child. And I remember, I don't know if Barbara Graham will remember this, but I remember sitting down, and Angie had us, I think we had to make little things out of, I want to say wrappers, to you had us do a little art thing in our seat. I don't know if you remember this. We had to shape something, and we had to surrender our children to the Lord, and I had never done that. And Barbara said, "You haven't done that yet?" It was I don't even think I was a leader then. I think that may have been my first year. And so I remember doing that, surrendering both of my children to God in that moment. Of course, that's a small act, but it still was. I'm giving you to Him, right? So that's the creation part that God brought him into. That's how John was born. And so from there, he was a delightful child, joyful, passionate about whatever he loved. He was totally, that was it. That was the be-all and end-all of whatever he loved. And I want to share one story from his youth, because we did hear from many people what a good heart he had. I mean, that was a consistent thing that teachers would tell us. And we knew that. We saw it. One story is that when he was really little, and I'm sharing these because these are the things I would go back to when he was starting to discern, because I started to remember all of these things. And so one of them was that when he was in preschool, he had these bugs that he just was into bugs, and he had a box of bugs. And we invited his really good preschool friend, and the preschool friend wanted his bugs right before he left, and he just got them. It was the first time he played with them, and he shared them with his friend. And the little kid said, can I have the bugs? And my son just said, okay. And he gave them to him. And I remember going, but no. And I what could I do? He just gave them all to him. And so that was kind of how he was. And so there are many stories like that that teachers would tell me. And then when he made his first Holy Communion, somebody invited the weekend they made his first Holy Communion. Somebody invited him to go to the beach, a friend, and he couldn't find his sandals, and I was annoyed with him because he never put anything away. I said, well, if you don't find your sandals, you can't go. You have to have sandals to wear at the beach. You can't go barefoot. And so I was doing something in the garage, and he's running around. He had made his first Holy Communion the Saturday night before. And so this was Sunday, and he was running around looking for his sandals, and I was busy, and he comes busting into the garage. Mom, I went and prayed. God showed me. He showed me where my sandals were. I went, what? He saw where they were. And they were in a laundry basket underneath a pile of stuff. I threw them in the laundry basket. Because I was cleaning up and I just tossed them in there. And so I realized that he had a prayer life as a child that was pretty vigorous. And as he shared other things with me, there are more of those things that I wasn't aware of. That was one of the times I was aware of what was happening to him when he prayed. So he had other stories. I can't share them all with you, but just to give you a sense of him. So we're going to get to the redeeming part now. Because he grew up to be a young adult and went off to college. I don't know if you saw the pictures, but he became an avid skateboarder, a really good skateboarder. That is him skateboarding in that picture, and that's in Alaska. A trip to Alaska at a skate park that somebody took of him skating. And so think about all of the things that go with that culture and life. And so he was very involved in that culture. And so came home after college, and he was really lost. And when he was in high school, he didn't know what he wanted to major in. He went to college at UC. He went to all public schools, by the way. He went to, but he was raised in the church. And he went to UC Santa Cruz. He ended up majoring in history, but then by his senior year, he discovered he loved literature and writing. And that's probably what he would have majored in if he had more time. He actually thought about staying longer so he could do more with writing and literature. And his favorite book was the book about Cain and Abel. What's the book? Steinbeck book. Somebody knows it here. It's the story of Cain, a modern story of Cain, East of Eden. And so it is literally the story of Cain and Abel modernized. And so I want to tell you this because he's in this culture and he's in this college life and he has a girlfriend and living this life but at the same time loving this book. And the part that he loved about the book was this Chinese man sharing the word Tim Shell and what Tim Shell means, because he's sharing the story of Genesis where about Cain and Abel, and he says Tim Shell means to make the choice, and he said that Abel made the choice, the right choice, and Cain made the choice to sin. It's a choice. We make a choice. And for some reason that really touched him, to the point where that's his email address, John Tim Shell. That's where that comes from, that book. And that was, during this time. So what I want to share with you is your child can be off doing all this stuff, but God's still in them, still there. And he still had that desire for God, and was still attracted to those things. And so he could still hear God when he was speaking, even through it all. But he was struggling, and he didn't know so he majored in history, but he didn't know what to do with it. So he came home and he was delivering pizza. And he was living at home, and he just didn't know what he was going to do with his life. And I just was so concerned about him. And I remember going to the Adoration Chapel. I was going regularly then, just pouring my heart out to the Lord in a journal, saying, Lord, I'm afraid he's going to just regret that he's wasted all these years, and something terrible is going to happen to him if you don't, help him, and he's lost. And I just, for all the horrible things I thought could happen if he didn't get home to the Lord fully. And so I just poured my heart out to the Lord, and I started praying a rosary every day for him. And one of the times I was praying for him in the Adoration Chapel, I got this prayer, and it really fits with this chapter 4 of, we're in chapter 4, right? Yeah, of John. Because the prayer was this: keep John away from all pursuits that will take him further away from you, and create in him a thirst for you that can only be quenched by the Lord Jesus as he is revealed in the Holy Roman Catholic Church. It was just there. It just came out, and I wrote it down, and I prayed it all the time for him. And one of the things he did during that time was with his girlfriend. They went to the fellowship, the Realization Fellowship. He came home with all this literature, and I saw it. Now I could have just been like, and I thought, he's still searching for you, Lord. He's still attracted to you. He's still searching. So I waited a few days, and I said, I noticed all this stuff. How was that when you went? So he told me about it. John, it's good to learn all that you can about what's out there. But don't believe that you fully know your Catholic faith. It is a treasure of stuff. Just because you were raised in the faith, you only know this much. There's so much there. So promise me that you'll give it due diligence. Like if you're going to look at this, that you'll look at that. You'll just continue to pursue the depth of your Catholic faith. And he did do that. One of the ways he did it was, I didn't know during this time, I brought home 2 tapes from one of our retreats. It was the one on the saints. You remember the lay Ralph Martin, thank you. He had those videotapes of saints, and John loves poetry, and I had given him a little book of John of the Cross poetry, and he loved the poetry, so he was reading that poetry. And so one was on John of the Cross, and another was on, I forget who the other saint was. I think it was Saint Francis. No, it wasn't Saint Teresa. It was 2 male saints, Saint Francis de Sales. I don't remember, but anyway, he was listening to those tapes when he came back to the church. He hadn't come back to the church yet, but he was in the taxi, or not the taxi, in his pizza delivery. He was listening to these tapes. So he was pursuing it all. So he has a crisis, a serious crisis during this time. And he comes to me, it was a mental health crisis. I'm not going to go into all the details, but it was quite serious. And he said, I don't know, because he wanted to go to the Abbey and he wanted to go to a psychologist, both. And so I did both. We did both. And he wanted to go to confession. So I took him up to the Abbey. I arranged for him to go up to the Abbey. And he befriended there, Father Michel was the person assigned to him, and they became very close. He's in the pictures. And Father Michel just began to teach him about the Catholic faith. And in that year, as he was getting well, both his 2 best friends moved away. His girlfriend did an internship in New York City. So the 3 most significant people in his life outside of us were gone. He only had us and his doctors and Father Michel. And so the Lord literally took everything away from him, all the pursuits that he was involved in away from him, and sat him down and turned him around 360 degrees during that year. And he began to discover Jesus. And the first thing I did was I took him to St. John the Evangelist Church at night to pray. And I asked him, we were going to pray the chaplet, and he said, I don't know if I can be Catholic, Mom. This was like at the very beginning. I don't know if I can be Catholic, because he knew what he was doing. I said, you can't be Catholic by yourself, John. You need Jesus to be able to do the things you know you should be doing. He knew what he was doing was wrong. But what he was saying to me was, I don't think I have the ability to stop doing those things. And I said, you don't. You need Jesus to be able to stop doing those things. I said, so can you just ask Jesus to help you? And he said, yeah, I can do that. And so he made the same kind of prayer I made. If you can do da-da-da-da-da-da-da, I promise I'll do da-da-da-da. And then the Lord did. The Lord answered his prayer. And so he was faithful to turn to the Lord in every way. And that's how it began with him. And in that year, he sponsored a homeless man to come into the Catholic Church. And the gift of that was he went through every sacrament again as an adult, sponsoring him through that. They did a special RCIA program for this man, so he did it one sacrament at a time. So there's a picture of him with that man at his confirmation over there. So that was the redemption. He had to, I don't know if I said this, but I think he went to confession 5 times before he got everything out. And I could see, I had this one vision of him when I was praying the rosary during this time where I saw a lamb, a little lamb that, you know how lambs get up and you think that they get wobbly on there. That's what I saw. And I had another one where I saw him fully clothed being consumed in this giant mouth. I felt like the Lord was just consuming him. And that's how he felt to me after he finished his last confession. I could see that my son, the little one that had the vision of, after communion, was back because he was pure. I could see, almost literally see the stuff he got rid of gone. And the purity of him, it was like he was a little child in a man's body. It was the most extraordinary thing that I could see that in him. And he's been like that ever since. He's been like that ever since. I mean, it's like I had him completely back as a child, but as an adult. So, I know I'm going over, so I'm going to stop here. Okay.
You want to hear about the ordination too?
Oh, okay. Oh, gosh, yeah, that's right. So the filling of the Holy Spirit. So he was being filled by the Holy Spirit during this time. Now, obviously, at the coming here, being the ladies, and I want to share the one story about. We went to Medjugorje, and we came back, and we went while he was there, we went to confession, and there were only 2 priests there. We went in the winter, so there weren't a lot of confessionals, and he went into the priest that happened to be, at that point he was starting to think about Father Mike's order, because that's the order he's in. And so he went into the confessional and he was sharing with this priest, and it turns out that this priest was a member of Father Mike's order. Now that's in Medjugorje. And so he was having those kinds of things happening to him as he was discerning the priest going into the order. So he did enter the order. But we came back from Medjugorje, and it was the feast day of the Immaculate Conception, and we went to church at St. Elizabeth Seton, and the ladies were there. And he decided after coming back from Medjugorje that he wanted to have the baptism of the Holy Spirit. He didn't do it before then. I'd given him a book to read, and so, but in that moment he said, I want to do it, and so we were at Mass, and so I asked you, and Kenny was there, if we could do that at some point, and we were going to come back and do that, and he came running back in the church and said, oh, let's just do it now, let's just do it now. So we were in the church at St. Elizabeth Seton, and I think Dawn was there, and Ellie was there were a number of the leaders that were there, and we just all gathered around him. And so this is my shout out to the Blessed Mother, because it was a feast day, and because we had just come back from Medjugorje. And in the St. Elizabeth Seton Church, my son is baptized in the Holy Spirit, and all these ladies have all these words for him. And I thought, we went clear to Medjugorje, and we came back, and you wanted the absolute best for him, and that is to give him the power and the fullness of the Holy Spirit. And he let us be the ones to usher that out. It was extraordinary to me, that he waited and made the decision when he got home, that the Lord provided that on her feast day. And I know she's the spouse of the Holy Spirit. I know that they're one in a very mystical way.
But that really came home to me in that moment, that she said, I'm giving you everything because I'm giving you the spouse of the Holy Spirit in fullness. It was just such a gift. So the ordination, how did I get there? Oh my gosh. So Holly wanted to know how I felt. So I want to be sure to answer your question, so that was the whole point of this. I was remarkably, didn't feel different. And I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but I really didn't. And I said, why don't I feel different, you know? I think he really prepared me for this. And even though in my mind I never allowed myself to see him as a priest, it's been an 11.5-year formation for him. You see all those pictures, that's all his formation through the years. People that have touched him and being in Fiji and back and forth. And I think the reason is he prepared me. As John was being formed for this, I saw him becoming a priest. I mean, not literally at the end, but we got used to him being religious. You know, so he was already doing a lot of the stuff. And I think being made a transitional deacon, he was giving homilies. You're gradually getting there. It's not like it's all of a sudden he's a priest. That's what it is. You're gradually getting there along with him. So it's not like a total shock and different. But I will tell you the moment where it felt really special and very different was when I realized he could bless objects. I was like, oh my gosh, he can bless objects. I know he did bless the sacrament. The Mass was wonderful. But when he was in the house, we had one day to be with him as a priest, and he got up early in the morning, and he really wanted to say Mass before he left on his flight. He was ordained on Saturday, and then on Sunday he said his first Mass at night, and then on Monday morning we had to get up early to take him to the airport to fly to Texas, which is where he is right now. That's his first assignment. He's going to be the associate pastor in Texas at one of their parishes. So we had very little time. And so we're home, and we're home from the Mass, and we're up early in the morning, and he said, he really wanted to be able to say Mass before he left. And we, the whole time, kept delaying getting him. Did you see the text I said about the Mass?
Yeah.
Did you see it? Okay. So we kept delaying getting it for him, and I said, let's just get at least a corporal and the basics so you have it so you can do the Mass. So you can have it, so you can you hear me now? Is that better? Yeah. So you can have it so you can do the Mass. And so then he goes and visits Angie while he's home, and comes home, and Angie had gave him the Mass kit, the cutest little Mass kit from Women's Christian Fellowship, which is why I wanted to share this story, how it blessed us, because we hadn't done it, and I went, oh my gosh, there's a Mass kit from Women's Christian Fellowship. It's so special. Oh, and it was so adorable. It was so cute. It was so little, and he just going to have to travel. It was perfect. It was just perfect. And so I said, now he can do the Mass. We were like Home Alone, you know, the movie when they're leaving for the flight? That's what it was like in our house that morning. I thought, how is he going to do a Mass? So calm, he's in his room, we'll have time, it won't take long. So in his bedroom, he has a little altar that he set up when he started this whole process. You know, he's got his stuff on it, and it's on his night table. He has a kneeler, and so he's in his stuff, and he gets it all done, and we do Mass. And I saw a candle there, and I go, why is he using that candle? It's not even blessed. You know, because I had all these candles on. Why is he using? It's the one that Lauren gave us. You know, he actually had a picture of us on it. And I realized, well, he was able to bless it himself. It was really, and so I just, oh my gosh. And that is when it hit me, Holly. And then when he blessed water for Women's Christian Fellowship, I watched him do that, praying the prayers so you can have it for the retreat. And he was so happy doing it. I mean, it just was, I think my husband and I always said when they were little, we just want them to have the vocation they're supposed to have. And I always told them that. You know, I don't know what you're supposed to be, but I want you to know Jesus. Literally, this is what I was saying, so you will know. You'll hear him when he tells you and guides you so you can get to that vocation. And so to see that happen is like the greatest feeling in the world, to be part of helping him get there and to hear the call and to be open to it. But it was a God work, but we were all part of it. So anyway, I think that's all I have to say.
Do you want to tell them
Yes,
about-
thank you. Yes, thank you. So I brought for you from the ordination Manutigium, and it means hand towel. That's Latin for hand towel. And what happens in the ordination is the bishop anoints their hands because they're holy hands, and he anoints them with this oil, and then they use a hand towel to wipe them. And the tradition is that it's given to the mother. So I have it, and mothers go to their grave with this with them.
Oh, wow.
And so the lady who made his vestments, who helps the congregation with the vestments, she made this, and it's embroidered. It has my name on it on the back. But I wanted to share it with you, and you can come up and touch it and bless yourself with it. And just don't take it. Where am I going to put it? I know it's safe in our bag. Yes, thank you. And there's also prayer cards from his ordination here. You may also take a card.
Thank you.
I feel like I forgot something really important, but it's okay. That's it. Yeah.
So,
Thank you so much. Oh, I remembered what it was. Can I just share it really quick? It's right here. Because this is about Father Mike. One of the things we did after he came back to the church and he was searching, he was so thirsty for God. He's everywhere, like a sponge. We took him to the SS.CC conference. And Father Mike, you know about these? He had everybody that the SCR, how many, 6,000 people? How many people are there? Father Mike had one of these crosses made up. This is from Jerusalem. I think Bernadette Feener got them for him. I don't know if she's here. And he put a scripture on them. And this is the one that John got. And it was early on. It was before he went to the pre-novitiate this happened. And he got Habakkuk 2:3. I didn't even know Habakkuk existed then. That was kind of a strange step for me. So we looked it up. And this is the scripture. For the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens toward the goal, and it will not fail. Though it tarries, wait for it, for it will certainly come. It will not delay.
wow.
And when John was discerning, he woke up in the morning and he said, "Mom, I had this kind of weird thing happen in bed." It was like God was saying, "You're going to become a priest, but it's going to take a really long time." And you know what? It took a really long time. But this has been such a gift, this scripture, and this prophetic word, really. It went from being around the neck, he wore it, then to my Bible marker after he left it. It was one of my Bible markers. And now it's on his crucifix, on his altar. So I'm so glad I remembered to say that. I would have felt really sad I forgot that.
Thank you.